My name's Miranda, and this is my story. My parents, Jack and Linda Thompson, had it all: successful careers, a beautiful house in the suburbs, and a plan. A plan that involved having a son, their precious heir. Instead, they got me. I remember the day I realized I wasn't the child they'd hoped for. I was 5, playing with my dolls in the living room when I overheard my mom on the phone. "Yes, it's true. We're having a boy." Her voice was filled with an excitement I'd never heard before. "Oh, you have no idea how long we've waited for this. Finally, a son." Those words cut deep. I didn't fully understand then, but I felt it, the sting of being second best, unwanted. Things changed quickly after that. Mom's belly grew bigger, and so did the distance between us. Dad was always working, and when he was home, all the talk was about the baby boy on the way. One day, Mom called me into the kitchen. "Miranda, sweetie, we need to talk." I climbed onto a chair, my legs dangling. "What is it, Mommy?" She didn't look at me as she spoke. "You're going to stay with Grandma for a while. Isn't that exciting? Mommy and Daddy need to prepare for the baby. You'll have more fun with Grandma anyway." And just like that, I was packed off to Grandma's house. Grandma Rose was Dad's mom, a retired English literature professor. She lived in a cozy little house filled with books and the smell of freshly baked cookies. Living with Grandma was different. She actually paid attention to me, listened when I talked, and didn't seem bothered by my presence. We'd spend hours reading together, and she'd tell me stories about when she was a teacher. For the first time in my life, I felt loved, truly loved. 2 years flew by. I was 7 when Dad showed up at Grandma's doorstep. "It's time to come home, Miranda," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Your brother needs you." Brother, the word felt foreign. As we drove home, Dad filled the silence with awkward small talk. "Your brother's name is Ethan, he's one now. You're a big sister now, Miranda. That's a big responsibility." I nodded, not really understanding what that meant. Little did I know, my childhood was about to end. We pulled into the driveway of our house. It looked the same, but it felt different. Mom was waiting at the door, a toddler on her hip. "Miranda, meet your brother, Ethan," she said, her voice oddly formal. I looked at the chubby-faced boy with curly blonde hair. He gurgled and reached out a pudgy hand towards me. "Hi, Ethan," I said softly. And just like that, at 7 years old, I became more than a sister. I became a caretaker, a responsibility, a built-in babysitter. My childhood slipped away, replaced by dirty diapers, constant vigilance, and the weight of expectations I was too young to bear. While my classmates were playing with dolls and learning to ride bikes, I was changing diapers and warming bottles. "Miranda, can you watch Ethan while I make a call?" Mom would say, not really asking. I'd nod, already reaching for my little brother. It wasn't that I didn't love Ethan, I did, fiercely. His toothless grin and grabby little hands had won me over from day one. But the constant responsibility was overwhelming. Days blurred together in a haze of school, chores, and babysitting. I was exhausted, struggling to keep up with my homework while making sure Ethan was safe and happy. But no matter how hard I tried, it never seemed to be enough. One fateful day, I took Ethan to the park. He was 2 now, full of energy and curiosity. I turned my back for just a second to tie my shoelace, and in that moment, disaster struck. "Miwanda!" Ethan's cry pierced the air, followed by a thud. I whirled around to see him sprawled on the ground, his knee bleeding. Panic seized me as I scooped him up, trying to soothe his wails. When we got home, Mom exploded. "How could you be so careless?" she shouted, cradling Ethan. "You're supposed to watch him." "I'm sorry, I just..." "No excuses," Dad chimed in, his face red with anger. "Go to your room. We'll discuss your punishment later." I fled upstairs, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't fair. I was doing my best, but I was just a kid myself. The incidents piled up. Ethan burning his tongue on hot porridge because I didn't blow on it enough. A bump on his head from a fall I couldn't prevent. Each time, the punishments got harsher, the disappointment in my parents' eyes more evident. Through it all, Grandma Rose was my lifeline. She'd visit when she could, her presence a balm to my battered spirit. During one visit, I overheard her confronting my parents in the kitchen. "This is unacceptable," Grandma's usually gentle voice was sharp. "Miranda is a child, not a nanny. Your favoritism towards Ethan is hurting her." "Mother, please," Dad sighed. "These are our children. We know what's best for them." "Do you?" Grandma challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, you're neglecting one child in favor of the other." "That's enough," Mom cut in. "We appreciate your concern, but this is our family. We'll raise our children as we see fit." I threw myself into my studies. School became my sanctuary, a place where I could shine on my own merits. And shine I did, my grades a silent rebellion against the notion that I wasn't good enough. The years flew by, and before I knew it, I was standing at a crossroads. High school was behind me, and college loomed ahead. Despite the constant struggle at home, I'd managed to excel in my studies. It was my ticket out, my chance at freedom. When the acceptance letter arrived, I could hardly believe my eyes. Not only had I been accepted to study investment management, but I'd also received a full scholarship. My hands shook as I read the words over and over again. "Mom, Dad," I called out, racing down the stairs. "I got in. Full scholarship." "Oh, thank goodness," Mom sighed, relief evident in her voice. "That saves us a fortune. We need to start saving for Ethan's college fund." My heart sank. Of course. It wasn't about my achievement. It was about the money they wouldn't have to spend on me. The first few months were a whirlwind of classes, new friends, and the exhilarating taste of freedom. The money from my parents, combined with the small amounts Grandma Rose secretly sent, was just enough to scrape by. I was careful with every penny, knowing how precious this lifeline was. But 6 months into my college journey, everything changed again. My phone rang one evening as I was studying for a finance exam. "Miranda," Mom's voice came through, curt and businesslike. "We won't be sending you any more money. Ethan needs tutors if he's going to have any chance at college. We need to focus our resources on him now." I felt the familiar sting of rejection, of being cast aside. "But Mom, I can barely." "You're an adult now, Miranda," she cut me off. "You need to solve your own problems. We can't keep supporting you forever." The next few weeks were a blur of stress and sleepless nights. I scoured job boards, applied to every position I could find. Finally, I landed a part-time gig at a nearby cafe. The hours were long, the pay was meager, but it was something. Balancing work and studies was brutal. I'd rush from classes to shifts, then stay up late into the night studying. Dark circles became a permanent fixture under my eyes, and my grades started to slip. One particularly rough day, I called Grandma Rose, desperate for a friendly voice. "Miranda, sweetheart, you sound exhausted," she said, concern evident in her voice. The dam broke. Through tears, I told her everything, the cut-off allowance, the grueling work hours, the struggle to keep up with my studies. "Those absolute," Grandma cut herself off, taking a deep breath. "Listen to me, Miranda, you focus on your studies. I'm increasing your monthly allowance. And don't you dare argue with me about it." "But Grandma." "No buts," she said firmly. "You deserve this education, and you shouldn't have to kill yourself working to get it. Your parents, well, let's just say, I'll be having words with them." True to her word, Grandma's support allowed me to cut back my work hours. I could breathe again, focus on my classes. My grades improved, and for the first time in months, I felt hope. The years at college flew by in a blur of textbooks, exams, and late-night study sessions. Before I knew it, I was standing on the stage, diploma in hand, magna cum laude gleaming on the certificate. As I scanned the audience, I spotted Grandma Rose, beaming with pride. My parents and Ethan were noticeably absent. With my degree in hand, doors opened. I landed a job at Stonebridge Investments, a prestigious firm in the city. The salary was more money than I'd ever seen, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly independent. To save money, I moved in with Sarah, a coworker who became a fast friend. Our tiny apartment was a far cry from the dorms, but it was ours, and it felt like freedom. When my first paycheck arrived, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. I scoured every second-hand bookstore in the city until I found it, a rare first edition of Grandma's favorite author. The following weekend, I took a train to my hometown, gift in hand. Grandma's face lit up when she saw me at her door. "Miranda, what a wonderful surprise." I presented her with the wrapped book, watching as tears welled in her eyes when she opened it. "Oh, my dear girl," she whispered, hugging me tight. "You shouldn't have." "I wanted to," I said simply. "You've done so much for me, Grandma." As we chatted over tea, I mentioned visiting my parents. Grandma's face tightened slightly, but she nodded. "I'm sure they'd love to see you." But when I called, Mom's voice was distant. "Oh, this weekend? We're quite busy, Miranda. Perhaps another time." The rejection stung, but I pushed it aside. I spent the weekend with Grandma instead, relishing her warmth and genuine interest in my life. As I boarded the train back to the city on Sunday, I couldn't help but feel a mix of sadness and relief. Time marched on. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye, and my career soared. My bosses praised my work ethic and insight, and the bonuses started rolling in. Soon, I was able to afford my own apartment, a small, sun-filled space that was all mine. One evening, as I was settling in for a quiet night, my phone rang. Mom's name flashed on the screen. "Miranda," she said without preamble. "These teachers, they just don't understand Ethan. They're giving him such poor grades. He barely scraped into City College." I bit my lip, choosing my words carefully. "Mom, maybe college isn't the right path for everyone. There are great vocational courses Ethan could." "Don't be stupid," she snapped. "Your brother is brilliant. Much smarter than you, actually. He's just misunderstood. He'll show everyone, you'll see." As I hung up, I gazed around my apartment, the tangible proof of my success. Yet somehow, I still felt like that little girl, desperately seeking approval. Life has a funny way of appending expectations. While I was building my career, brick by careful brick, Ethan's college experience was crumbling around him. It was a crisp autumn day when Mom called again, her voice tight with frustration. "Ethan's been expelled," she said without preamble. "He's coming home." She launched into a tirade about unfair professors and a system designed to fail students like Ethan. I listened, biting my tongue against the urge to point out the thousands they'd spent on his education, the loans they'd taken out to rent him a luxury apartment, the generous allowance they'd provided. All things I'd never had. "We'll figure something out," Mom concluded. "Ethan just needs time to find his path." I thought about Ethan, now 21, returning to our childhood home, while I, at 27, was forging ahead in my career. The contrast was stark, but I pushed the thought aside. Comparison is the thief of joy, after all. Life, however, had other plans for me. It was at a company event that I met Jack, tall, kind-eyed, with a quick wit that made me laugh like I hadn't in years. Our whirlwind romance swept me off my feet, and before I knew it, we were standing in a small chapel, exchanging vows in front of a handful of loved ones. Grandma Rose was there, of course, beaming with pride. My parents attended too, though their smiles seemed a bit forced. Ethan didn't come, citing a vague prior commitment. Jack and I moved into his apartment, a cozy space that quickly became home. His parents, Tom and Ellen, welcomed me with open arms, their warmth a balm to my soul. A year into our marriage, I found out I was pregnant. The joy that filled me was indescribable. When we announced it to our families, Jack's parents were ecstatic. My parents' reaction was more subdued. "Do you know what it is yet?" Mom asked immediately. I shook my head. "It's too early to tell." As the months passed, their interest in the baby's gender became almost obsessive. When we finally revealed it was a boy, their relief was palpable. "A grandson," Dad exclaimed. "That's wonderful news, Miranda." I tried not to read too much into their reaction, focusing instead on preparing for our son's arrival. Little Alexander came into the world on a rainy Tuesday, his tiny hand wrapping around my finger as if to say, "I'm here, Mom. I've got you." As I held him, I vowed to give him all the love and support I'd craved as a child. While I was navigating new motherhood, Ethan continued to drift. He picked up odd jobs here and there, but nothing stuck. He was still living at home, much to our parents' poorly concealed frustration. During a rare family dinner, I tried to broach the subject gently. "You know, Ethan, there's an entry-level position opening up at my company. I could put in a good word." "Miranda," Mom cut me off sharply. "Your brother doesn't need your charity. He's just taking his time to find the right opportunity." Dad nodded in agreement. "You were lucky, Miranda. Things just fell into place for you. Not everyone has it so easy." I blinked, stunned. Lucky? The sleepless nights studying, the years of juggling work and school, the constant struggle to prove my worth, none of that felt like luck. But I swallowed my retort, not wanting to start an argument. As I looked around the table, at my parents' defensive postures, Ethan's sullen expression, and little Alexander babbling happily in his high chair, I realized something profound. Family isn't just about blood. It's about support, understanding, and unconditional love. And sometimes, the family you choose can fill the gaps left by the one you're born into. As Alexander's 5th birthday approached, we planned a trip to my hometown, Jack, our son, and me. Our first stop was Grandma Rose's house. We spent a wonderful afternoon with her, Alexander captivated by her stories and the old photos she showed him. As we were leaving, Grandma pulled me aside. "Your parents have been struggling," she said softly. Maybe it's time to let bygones be bygones?" The next day, we stood on my parents' doorstep. Mom answered, looking older and more tired than I remembered. Dad was in his armchair, Ethan slouched on the couch. They both looked up as we entered. After awkward greetings and stilted small talk, Mom cleared her throat. "Miranda, we need to talk to you about something." What followed was a halting explanation of their financial troubles. Medical bills, Ethan's ongoing unemployment, the lingering college debt, it had all piled up. "We hate to ask," Dad said, not meeting my eyes, "but we could use some help." I glanced at Jack, who gave me a subtle nod. Despite everything, these were my parents. Of course, I heard myself say. "I can send some money each month." The relief on their faces was palpable. We worked out the details, $1,500 a month, with the understanding that they could reach out if emergencies arose. Over the next 2 years, I faithfully sent the money each month. There were occasional requests for extra help, a broken water heater, unexpected car repairs, which I always obliged. It felt good to be able to help, to maybe finally earn their approval. When Thanksgiving rolled around, we found ourselves back in my childhood home. The house was full, aunts, uncles, cousins, and Grandma Rose all crowded around the dining table. As we ate, Mom and Dad couldn't stop talking about Ethan. "He's been at his new job for 3 months now," Mom beamed. "Such a hard worker." Dad chimed in, "Did you see the new sofa cushions? Ethan bought those with his first paycheck." So thoughtful of him. I glanced around the room, noting the new curtains, the fresh paint on the walls, the updated appliances in the kitchen. All purchased with the money I'd been sending. But I bit my tongue, not wanting to spoil the mood. Jack squeezed my hand under the table, a silent show of support. Alexander, oblivious to the undercurrents, happily chatted with his cousins. The Thanksgiving dinner continued, the chatter of family filling the air. I was just starting to relax when Alexander tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, can I go play in the other room?" he asked, his eyes bright with the restlessness of a 5-year-old at a grown-up gathering. I nodded, ruffling his hair. "Sure, sweetie. Just don't make too much noise, okay? As Alexander scampered off, I turned back to the conversation. Barely a minute had passed when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced at the screen, confusion furrowing my brow. The caller ID read, "Mom." I looked up at my mother, sitting directly across from me at the table. "Mom, why are you calling me?" She frowned, shaking her head. "I'm not calling you, dear. My phone's in the living room." Just then, Alexander reappeared in the doorway, my mother's phone clutched in his small hands. The room fell quiet as all eyes turned to him. "Mommy," he said, his voice ringing in the sudden silence. "I found Grandma's phone and I wanted to see who she talks to." I saw a funny name, Cash Cow, and clicked on it to see who it would call. "Why did it call you, Mommy?" "What's a cash cow?" The words hit me like a physical blow. Cash cow. Is that all I was to them? I looked around the table. My relatives sat frozen, forks halfway to their mouths. Grandma Rose's face was a mask of shock and anger. And my parents, they had gone deathly pale. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, until something inside me snapped. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Cash cow," I repeated, my voice trembling. "Is that what I am to you?" My mother opened her mouth, but no words came out. My father couldn't even meet my eyes. "Let me tell you all something," I continued, addressing the whole table. "For the past 2 years, I've been sending my parents $1,500 every month. When they've asked for extra, I've sent that too. All those new things you've been admiring? The curtains, the appliances, the fresh paint? That was all bought with my money." I could feel tears pricking at my eyes, but I blinked them back. I did this despite years of being treated like I was second best. Despite being sent away as a child, despite having to work my way through college while Ethan got everything handed to him. I did it because I thought maybe, finally, you'd see me. You'd be proud of me. My voice cracked on the last words. But instead, I'm just your cash cow. A resource to be milked dry. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Jack stood up and put his arm around me, a solid presence at my side. Alexander, not fully understanding but sensing the tension, came and wrapped his arms around my legs. The silence in the room was deafening. I stood there, heart pounding, waiting for my parents to say something, anything. An apology, an explanation, even a denial. But what came next shocked me to my core. My mother's face hardened, her eyes flashing with indignation. "Well, of course you help us. We gave birth to you, raised you, it's your duty. Don't be so sensitive about a silly phone contact." I felt as if I'd been slapped. Years of pent-up frustration and hurt bubbled to the surface. Duty? Is that what you think this is? Well, let me make this clear, from this day forward, I'm done. No more money, no more help. I'm cutting ties. At the mention of losing financial support, Mom's demeanor changed instantly. Tears sprang to her eyes. "How can you be so heartless? After everything we've done for you." She looked around the table, seeking support from our relatives. But to her surprise, and mine, they remained silent. One by one, they looked away from her pleading gaze. Then Grandma Rose spoke up, her voice quivering with anger. "Heartless? You dare call Miranda heartless after how you've treated her? Well, let me tell you something, I want nothing more to do with you either. And you can forget about any inheritance. It's all going to Miranda and Alexander." The room erupted into chaos. Mom was sobbing, Dad was trying to calm her down, and Ethan just sat there, looking bewildered. In the midst of it all, I felt Jack's hand on my shoulder, grounding me. "I think it's time we left," he said softly. I nodded, suddenly exhausted. We gathered Alexander and our things, said goodbye to Grandma Rose and the other relatives, and walked out without another word to my parents. True to my word, I stopped all financial support. The call started almost immediately, first pleading, then angry, then downright abusive. When the messages turned into threats, I warned them that I'd take legal action if they didn't stop. Eventually, the calls and messages trickled to a stop. Life went on. I focused on my career, on Jack, on raising Alexander. Grandma Rose became an even bigger part of our lives, her love and support a balm to the wound left by my parents' betrayal. Years passed. Through the grapevine, I heard that Ethan had racked up significant debts. My parents, in a last-ditch effort to bail him out, had to sell their house. The three of them ended up in a small apartment across town. When I heard the news, I was surprised to find that I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, not even anger anymore. They had made their choices, just as I had made mine. Today, as I watch Alexander play in our backyard, Jack by my side, and Grandma Rose laughing from her favorite chair on the patio, I realize something profound. I've finally found my place, my worth. And no one can take that away from me.